What's going on, everybody? It's me, your favorite neighborhood Spider-Man host, Ryan Monson, here for another awesome episode of the Classic Buffalo Podcast, where we interview everyday people on their stories, everything from as serious as depression and anxiety, mental health issues, all the way to cats, dogs, sports, fashion, and everything in between. Today, we have a jam-packed episode with me interviewing someone who is an aspiring actress who's just a little bit famous, has a little bit of an IMDb credit history. We talk a lot about fashion, acting, and it's gonna be a pretty good episode in my own non-biased opinion. It's pretty biased, but I gotta pretend like I'm non-biased. Anyways, guys, today we are interviewing Chloe Broeker. She is awesome, and I hope you enjoy today's episode. We made it into the 40s, episode 40 with Chloe Broeker. Here we go. What's going on, Chloe? Happy Friday.
Happy Friday. Not much really. I just got home actually. Made myself another coffee because when the weather is like this, I usually just I feel like I'm dragging.
Right. What's your go-to like coffee blend? Do you do like dark, lots of sugar, lots of milk?
Right. So I really love a light roast. I used to be a barista, so actually light roast does have more caffeine in it just because of the way that the roast is. So I really go for that. It's usually a smoother flavor too. I'm not much for like super bitter.
Yeah.
But yeah, no. And then not usually a lot of sugar, but I like a good creamer. Like any flavored creamer. I just like usually go to like a coconut milk one, something really light for sure.
Do you have any like cool or funny or crazy stories from being a barista?
Oh gosh, several. I worked at a Starbucks location closer to downtown. So we would get all kinds of traffic in there all the time.
Yeah.
And there was one particular day we had like this regular. His name was Dave, and he came in. This was actually kind of an awesome story now that I think about it. But we were slammed. It was like right around the time of like Circle of Lights, and it always gets super crazy downtown. And
like holiday season.
Yeah, for sure. So everybody always flocks downtown, and we always get super, super busy. And there was one day that I was working the register, and we were down a barista, so I was like going back and forth between like the barista bar to the front counter, back to the barista bar. Mm-hmm. And Dave came in, and he was like, "Oh wow, it looks like you're really busy." And I was hardly having a conversation with him. Usually we have like nice conversations, and that day I think he could tell that I was just like super. And so I went to make like his regular cup of coffee, and I turn around to give it to him, bump it, spill the whole coffee all over myself. Just really bad. No. And it had already taken so long to get him his coffee. I just felt awful, but I did get to remake him one, and he ended up leaving me a $20 tip, and he was like, "Whoa. Merry Christmas." And he was like, "You pocket that." And I was like, "Thanks, Dave." So basically I'm going to name my firstborn son Dave.
Do you already have like names picked out and stuff?
I feel like it's like a girl thing to like now, like I've talked to a lot of my friends who like keep like lists in their phone. Yeah. So I definitely have a list in like my notes section just on like names that I like for sure.
Yeah. I also do that. So that's why I was just curious, but yeah.
Oh, gotcha.
Mine's probably like Julian, because he's one of my favorite football players. And then also like I had a really cool coach growing up, like named Julian. So I'm like, if I have two guys over so far 26 years, I feel like I should name somebody Julian or make it a middle name or, do something. But,
yeah, for sure. My boyfriend actually, we joke about this all the time because he always claims that if we have a son, way down the road, that he would name him Giannis, after the Greek freak.
Yeah, the basketball player. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. And then like a couple days ago or whatever, he randomly asked me, he was like, "What about Conor McGregor?" I was like, "No." We can't have Giannis and Conor McGregor. People are going to think things.
Yeah. That's so funny. But that's kind of cool, just kind of I don't. Maybe our generation is just going to be like that. We're just going to name them after a lot of like, you know, like, and this is Nicki after Nicki Minaj, or like Cardi, or
Right.
That'd be interesting.
I know. Imagine. I like names from books. Like a lot of books I read, I usually find like really interesting names on there. And that's usually how I come up with like a lot of names for girls, especially. I feel like.
All right. Are you a big reader?
I love to read. Yes.
What are you like reading right now, or like one of your favorite books over the last like 2 years or something?
So I actually am reading a really good book right now. So I got it at the airport right before I left for vacation over break. And it's called Bitter Orange by Claire Fuller. And it's like, I'm really into like thrillers and things that are kind of psychological, things that kind of trick your brain a little bit. And this book, I have not been able to put it down. I've had it for about a week now, and I'm 2 chapters away from finishing it. That was actually my evening plan. But yes, it's very good.
Sweet. All right. Well, there you go. That's your recommendation for 2020. Everybody go check out that book. Unless, well, maybe you should finish it first, and then, you know, what if it sucks at the ending?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, let's not speak too soon.
Right. But yeah, so you mentioned you're on vacation. So let's talk about like growing up. Where are you at right now? Like you probably got the travel bug, so we can even talk about that. But just like, are you from Indy? You know, what's your background?
Right. Yeah. So, I'm actually from like a very little town in southern Indiana, right outside of Evansville. It's called Boonville. Um, and it's exactly what you think of when you think of small town. You know, lots of corn. And actually, our mascot was a pioneer. So our mascot wore a raccoon hat and carried around a musket. So very different. But yeah, so I'm from there. And then whenever I was in high school, and it was time to start thinking about colleges and things like that, I pretty much knew that I wanted to go away. But I was also super into volleyball at the time. I'd been playing volleyball for years, and I had made like a travel team for Under Armour.
Whoa.
And so yeah, for a brief period of time, like my junior year in high school, I spent some time in Baltimore, Maryland, where they actually have very, very good seafood. But yeah, so I got to spend a bit of time there, and did get recruited by some East Coast schools and things like that, but nothing that ever really drew my attention. I think when it came down to it, especially after like a couple injuries later on in high school and stuff like that, I just kind of decided, maybe leaving behind the sports and going forward and just kind of figuring out who I am and what I want to do with my life, because I really didn't have like a good idea. I just knew that I wanted to go away for school and get away from my small town. And so I did end up in Indianapolis. I go to school at IUPUI. And
currently?
Yes. Yep. Okay. Yep. So I'm in my junior year now. Nice. So yeah, which is really, really nice. But yep. And I study communication studies there. And then I've got a minor in digital media. Ooh. Super fun. I actually love my degree.
That's a change of pace. A lot of people are in majors they hate, or, they end up doing a career which they don't really like.
Yeah, of course. And I definitely started there. I started out in the School of Science, and I thought I wanted to be a doctor for a short period of time, and quickly realized that it was not for me at all. So yeah, and then I found my way into art school for a little bit, which I did love. I still didn't really have a really good grasp on what I wanted to do with that. So from there, I picked up communication studies, and the great thing about my minor is that I do still have that balance between the art school, and then the School of Informatics, which is really cool.
Whoa, informatics.
Yes.
You passionate about it?
I'm passionate about the creative side of it for sure. I'm not a super logistical thinker. I'm very much more on the creative side of things, definitely.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you told me this like off air about how you have 2 IMDb credits. How the hell did you pull that off?
It was about the summer between my freshman year and sophomore year of college. I got picked up by a talent agency here locally, Model and Talent Management. And so I've been with them for some time. That's my mother agency. Um, and from there, we're actually kind of working on my national contract right now, which is really exciting. But I started out just floating around, kind of enjoying the experience, not really knowing like what my potential was on the modeling side of things or the acting side of things or anything like that. And then I got picked up for a showcase called the LA Talent Tour in Los Angeles, which was exactly a year ago almost. And so I flew out there and met with a couple of agencies and casting agents and things like that, which was like my first time ever experiencing anything like that. It was amazing, and it really opened my eyes to not really only the acting side of the industry, but my potential there. So from there, I kind of had like a fire lit under me, and I was like, I think I really want to start doing more with acting. I had been taking several acting classes at that point and had started to enjoy it and just never really knew what that future held for me, I guess. Again, came back, picked up on some more acting classes, and then started actually going to auditions for things. So I've done a couple of independent films, most of them being in the Chicago area, which is really fun. I love traveling to Chicago. And then I also did just get picked up for a series this past summer, which we haven't filmed for yet, but they're actually in the process of selling it to Netflix, which is really, really exciting.
So you probably can't talk too much about it.
No, unfortunately,
That's all right.
I can't.
But that's exciting.
Yes, yeah, very exciting. So I picked up a couple of my credits. One of them was for a film called Oh, well, are we allowed to cuss on here?
Oh yeah, you're good.
Okay. So it's called Oh Shit. And I played one of the mean girls, I guess you would say, just one of the gossip girls. So yeah, so that was like my first time with a supporting role, and I got an IMDb credit for that. And then the second IMDb credit I got was for actually just like a little short scene spinoff. So have you ever seen the movie Split?
Sounds so familiar. Is that where the guy kidnaps the girl?
Yeah, and he has
girls?
like the multi-personality. Yeah. So I actually started working with, his name is Nick Sims, and he's an actor slash producer, and he really wanted to do a scene spinoff from the Horde scene, which is where it's like one of the final scenes in the movie. It's really intense, actually. And I played Casey Cook in that scene, and it was super nerve-wracking leading up to it, honestly, because most stuff that I had ever acted in was more so like comedy, nothing ever like life or death, serious. So that really kind of put me to the test, but it actually ended up being a really beautiful piece of work because it did go viral. We have over 104,000 views on it now, which is really, really tight. People started tagging like Ellen DeGeneres, and I was like, oh my gosh. But that was pretty wild. So
dang, you're famous.
I think everybody thinks I think everyone hopes for that. But right now it just feels like I'm constantly still like climbing. Like I always have to outdo the last thing that I did, basically.
Yeah, I totally get that. Like, what do you, okay, for like an IMDb credit, is that like something you, like an application process, or is there anything like or could you get an IMDb credit if I was to make an hour-long documentary on YouTube and then you were in it, kind of thing?
Right. So usually you have to have like an approved director, and then they have to basically register the film project. And then from there, I know that there's a lot of stuff that they have to do behind the scenes. Like I think they have to have links to it, like the upload, and then like all the verification stuff. And then basically as the actor or actress in whatever project it is, you just kind of have like you just get tied to the project basically. So like I woke up and I had like an email one day and it was like, you've been tied to this project on IMDb. So you do have to have an account. So that's how I got tied to it. I had made an account basically just because my agent told me, you know, you should make an account on IMDb if you're going to pursue acting. So that's like the top browser, I guess, that agents and casting directors look at when it comes to actors and actresses.
And you're there.
Yes, I have 2 credits now, so pretty wild.
Yeah. So what's kind of like, I mean, you're towards the tail end of college and stuff like that. Like what are you trying to do like in your next steps, or what are you doing right now?
So right now, so I did just give myself a couple weeks off from like auditions and traveling and stuff like that. Mostly just to spend time with family. Because I do get really homesick. I get so busy while I'm up here in Indianapolis that I don't get a lot of time to travel home and see my family. So making sure that I had those weeks open was everything to me. But now that we're back in it, I am about to head back to Los Angeles. So I'm actually going back for the same event that I was talking about, the Los Angeles Talent Tour.
Yeah.
But this year, I'm actually speaking at the event. Yeah. So another agent of mine, she happily negotiated that for me, which is really, really cool and kind of hits close to home because that's where everything really kind of started for me. So... But yeah, and then I'll just be having a couple of meetings and workshops and things like that while I'm there. But yeah.
That's so cool. I mean, like, are you trying to become a full-time actress, or do you want to kind of just see how it all plays out? Maybe I want to do my own show or direct, or like what's on your mind, like things that you kind of want to accomplish in the next couple of years, do you know?
So a lot of like crazy things. I do have a lot of interest in the industry in general. So like in varying areas. One, I would love to become a full-time actress. That's probably like the dream goal at the end of the day. I did just get accepted into film school, so the New York Film Academy's branch in Los Angeles. So we've been thinking about that and kind of talking that over with my parents and figuring out next steps on that. Is that where I'm going to end up after I finish my bachelor's, things like that. But I also have like a big interest in fashion, and obviously I wouldn't be able to ever model in that world just because I am fairly short. But I do just have like a love for fashion and the culture behind it, and a lot of that. So I do keep up with a lot of actually a lot of Vogue documentaries and vlogs and things like that. I like to read into things, especially now they do a lot of movements, especially when it comes to like the environment and things like that. Another thing that I really, really want to accomplish and actually made a goal for this year, which I really haven't told anyone, which is kind of cool, but I really want to write a book. It's a bucket list thing for me to be a published author. So I really set a goal for me this year because I do love to write. That's kind of like my therapeutic release is writing. So I kind of set a goal for myself that, you know, I'm going to take each day this year, set some time aside and really work on making this book and making it how I want it to be. I'm not really pressuring myself to have like a deadline or anything like that because I want whatever I finish to be great and exactly how I want it. So the reason I haven't told a lot of people, honestly, is just because I don't want too many people to expect anything, I guess, you know, just the added pressure. But it is something that I'm very excited about, something that I'm really putting like my whole self into. So I have gotten started on that, and so far I'm really enjoying it.
Good.
But yeah,
I share that sentiment, so I know what it's like to eventually want to write a book and stuff like that. And I've been just working on that behind the scenes and trying not to tell very many people, but we both literally just did. So for whoever listens to this episode, but still,
our secret's out.
Yeah. But so you also like mentioned about being like passionate about like French. like fashion? Is
Yeah.
there like a reason why that specifically, or like can you elaborate anything on that?
Right. So French fashion is just kind of one of those keystones in the whole entire fashion industry. Um but I think it started from like a pretty young age. My mom actually, she really likes the French culture and things like that. Actually, when she was naming me and my sister, she was like, "I really like French girl names," so that's why my name is Chloe, and things like that. She just really likes unique names, and from there I think growing up I there was like that fantasy about seeing the Eiffel Tower, about actually getting to walk around Paris. I watched movies all the time
Mm-hmm.
about people being in Paris, and just always wanted to travel there. And then whenever I was 16, my mom actually made that come true for me. So
What?
I got to visit, yes, yep, I got to visit Paris, France, which actually, when I got there, was actually very like stinky um, and kind of gross. But nonetheless, it was still Paris. And one thing that I really love about Europe in general is that they preserve their architecture so much more than we do here in the United States. So a lot of like the architecture that you look at when you're there is very historic. It's beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, there's just something about it. I love it so much. But when it comes to fashion and beauty, Parisian women are just very much about simple, less is more, and they really embrace their perfections there. Like French women don't hide like their freckles or their stretch marks or things like that, versus a lot of things here in the United States are very much like full coverage. If you don't like it, get Botox,
Mm-hmm.
things like that. But I just really like the concept of, embracing your most natural self, light makeup, um, very simple things pairing together, focusing on detail, things like that. There's a way about it that's so effortless and elegant at the same time that I just love, and I have always been amused by it.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
I'm the opposite. I love the loud, crazy stuff, and then I'll
Right.
see a simple That's what's hard for me when I go to find vintage stuff. I'm like, this is so simple, but then there's someone who's like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, this could go with so much stuff. It's like that. So I'm
Right.
just the opposite. But like, falling in love with a culture, it's a definitely like I don't know. That's my favorite part of traveling is getting like every single culture in every city, really, if you take
Mm-hmm.
enough time, is so different. And the clothing that they wear, the way people talk, the food that they eat, that it's like, do you get like super enthralled all the way, or just more so like in the fashion?
Mostly into
Yeah.
fashion, but I do like I got to try like unique like French dishes when I was there too. So I tried creme brulee for the first time ever in Paris, which not a lot of people can say.
True.
um and then I also did try escargot because like you have to, I
Mm-hmm.
feel like. And
Yay
I
or
ate
nay?
two snails.
Yay or
Two
nay?
snails.
Yes or no? Is it a good?
To be honest, I didn't mind it. It really, like, the texture of it is pretty similar to that of like a portobello mushroom, and
Mm.
then it's covered in like this really thick pesto sauce, so you really don't taste much other than the pesto. But it was so funny because it was like our last night in Paris or something like that, and it was raining. And I told my mom, I was like, Mom, while we're here, I have to try escargot. I just have to try
Yep.
it one time just to make sure that I do it. And we found this little tiny cafe, and our waiter, he came over to the table, and he was like, oh, this is your first time. He was like, well, then you have to wear the hat. And I was like, oh no. And he came and brought like this like straw hat over and put it on my head and took a picture of me with my plate of snails with this Polaroid camera. And so now I can say that my picture is hanging in a Parisian cafe. But yeah, and they had like this wall of everyone, from people traveling from different countries and like trying
Mm-hmm.
escargot for the first time. It's like a thing there. But
Yeah.
it was really fun, and that memory is gonna stick with me forever.
Yeah. It's so cool. I loved
Yeah, I
Europe.
don't
I
know.
loved Europe when I was over in Scotland and England for a month. I loved it.
You spent a whole month there?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's a dream.
Yeah.
I had I think we were away for 10 days. And in those 10 days, we went to Dublin, Wales, London, and then Paris.
Gosh, yeah, I didn't get to go to Wales, but oh well, I'm sure it's the same.
It was really cool. We spent one day in Wales. That was it, really, and we toured like this like castle. It was like the ruins of a castle, basically. And then I also had fish and chips there, so that was
Yeah,
really cool because they would like go and catch your fish and then bring them in and then just like make it fresh for you, which was super cool.
they catch the
But yeah,
French fries with the chips.
yeah, yeah, crazy breeds there. Yeah,
Farm to
totally
table,
different.
farm to table.
Yeah, but it was very good. And then my mom and I actually we went into like this little resale shop there, and I did buy like a little. It was like a polka dot
Yeah.
dress, which is really cute. I don't even know where that is now. That makes me sad.
What
But
other like what brands are French? Because I'm trying to think like is Louis Vuitton, are they like French?
where I find the most interesting brands are like in the small boutiques. So a lot of their stuff, like I said, is it's very simple. I think that like most of the bigger brands that we know nowadays, it's hard to tell where they're even based out of just because they're worldwide now.
Yeah.
But I'm trying to think of like some of the bigger brands that walk during Paris Fashion Week, but at this point they all kind of blend together.
Mm-hmm.
um, but I think more so what I'm taken by is just how they present themselves in the world all the time. They're just always, like I said, it's just that effortless, like, I woke up like this and,
Mm-hmm.
and I just look like this all the time.
Yeah, right.
Sort of vibe. But yeah, I don't know.
What do you think appeals about that?
To me, I've always been someone who, when it comes to like your natural beauty, when it comes to those imperfections like stretch marks or wrinkles and freckles and things like that, I think that those things are so beautiful about a person. I think that um the stretch marks show that you've lived a life and you've been active and you've done things and you've been out into the world, and maybe you've climbed rocks, or maybe you had a child, or you never know. And I just think that, yeah, they're little tiny scars, but I just think that they tell a story. And I love freckles, and nowadays everybody wants freckles, which is so funny to me. And wrinkles, it's just a lot of the things. To me, I just feel like they're just signs of life, and I don't feel like we should cover those up. I feel like we should embrace those. And that's one big staple in French beauty and fashion, is just showing those imperfections, embracing them, and still knowing that you're beautiful the way you are.
Are you pretty body positive, you would say?
I would say that I definitely had my journey when it comes to learning how to be body positive. Um, in high school, I struggled a lot. I think a big part of that too, and I'm not trying to blame like anyone either, but I think a big part of that was just being like small town
Mm-hmm.
and just wanting to fit in and always wanting to kind of look like be the best or look the best, and just trying to find your place in the world, I think. And when you're in a small town, you feel like that's your world, is that small town. And I was an athlete, and I was a 3-sport varsity athlete. So my body was constantly changing, especially from going from volleyball into swimming, and then from swimming into
Yeah.
track. Your body goes through so many changes. And, trying to keep up with that in the middle of formal season and prom and things like that, when you want to fit into these beautiful dresses, and it's really, really easy to get insecure
Mm-hmm.
because you were like, it was like seeing your body in something, beautiful and elegant, versus you're constantly wearing a jersey or sweats or something like that as an athlete in school. So I think that watching my body transition a lot messed with me. And I don't know, I did struggle with it for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to really learn to accept myself before I could fully embrace being body positive and things like that. And even still today, you know, even after graduating high school and going off to college, my body changed even more because I was no longer that varsity athlete who was practicing twice a day.
Right.
So, you know, then again, I kind of went through just this little stumble where I was so confused and felt so weird in my own skin. So I think that's why I do look up to a lot of like the French beauty um, concepts, just because, you know, it made me feel comfortable. Like, yeah, I have stretch marks, but that's okay. I have freckles and those are pretty. And, you know, it shows that I've lived my life and that I've accomplished so many things. And I definitely had to learn how to make peace with it for sure. It wasn't always easy.
Yeah.
Definitely not.
Yeah. The reason I'm asking is like, what would your advice be to someone who maybe is struggling with body positivity? They don't like the way they look, or maybe they get made fun of, or something like that.
Right.
Are there any strategies that you used, or you would recommend, or a phrase you might say that might help that person?
I think when it comes to your body and knowing yourself, I think the biggest thing is just knowing that every single body is different. Just like, you know, just like your fingertips, every single um, thumbprint is different. Every part of you is different from someone else. There's nobody that looks just like you and nobody that's built just like you and things like that. I mean, I think that we size each other up a lot, especially in American culture. I think like the biggest thing, like I said, is always constantly having to fix yourself and look a certain way. But really, beauty trends fade. I think at the end of the day, you just need to look at yourself, and as difficult as it may be, accept yourself. If you feel that things are unhealthy, if you feel like maybe, you know, I'm starving myself, I'm trying to cope with the way that I feel about myself in unhealthy ways, like starving yourself, or even doing the opposite, or maybe binging and things like that, you need to realize that those are not healthy habits. And I think that you need to seek help. I don't see that there's anything wrong with asking for help whenever you are in those low pits. I've had to ask for help, and I think like we always say that asking for help is a sign of weakness, or maybe people just think that, but asking for help is definitely a sign of strength, in my opinion. It's confident, knowing that when you need someone there for you, going to that person and saying, hey, I'm having a tough time with this. But I think that it's just in us to strive for perfection at all times as human beings. And at the end of the day, like, the most beautiful things about you, the most unique things about you are everything that makes you imperfect. Um, I just, you know, like I said, it's a journey for me. Honestly, everybody's journey is very different. A lot of times I would like, not to be like super explicit or anything, but like whenever I would get out of the shower, I would try to get really comfortable with myself by looking at myself in the mirror all the time instead of always hiding from myself. Wearing clothes that fit you are going to make you feel so much better. I stopped looking at the size of the jeans that I was buying all the time, because if you buy those jeans from Old Navy or if you buy them from American Eagle, 9 times out of 10 you're going to have a very different size. And that's just because we size jeans so weird. But everything is different. If you're wearing clothes that fit you and look good on your body, you're going to feel better in them. You just have to ignore the labels, because every single store is different. Things are going to fit different. Wearing things that make you feel confident is another thing that really helps me embrace my femininity, my body type, things like that. I stopped worrying so much about wearing like athletic wear, and I once I had like that one really good pair of jeans, I remember like I would leave my house and I didn't care what size the jeans were, but I felt unstoppable because I knew I looked so good in those jeans. So I think, you know, buying things that fit your body, that make you feel confident, you know, getting comfortable with yourself in front of the mirror, even if that means you have to set aside 5 to 10 minutes a day and just look at yourself in the mirror, make different faces at yourself in the mirror, look at the way that you move in front of the mirror, things like that. You have to do uncomfortable things to become comfortable, I feel like. Everybody's first instinct is to hide away, and really you don't want to do that. You want to start facing yourself, because at the end of the day, you're your own biggest critic.
Preach. Yeah, the biggest competition is yourself.
Yes. I actually teach some acting classes now.
Yeah.
At my agency, which is really cool, but an opportunity I never thought I would ever have, but here I am. But I tell them all the time, when they're performing their monologues and things like that, I'm always like, you need to sit at home and practice these in front of a mirror. It's going to feel so weird and goofy, and you may even be embarrassed to do it, but you are your own biggest critic. You're going to judge yourself harder than any stranger is going to judge you. So you may as well just practice it in front of the mirror when you're home alone. You can be as loud as you want. You can make whatever faces you want, things like that. But I always tell people to get comfortable with themselves in front of a mirror. It's the biggest thing, especially if you're presenting yourself to the public.
It's good advice. It really is. Like, even for public speaking in front of a mirror is good.
Everybody has to take speech in college. It's like a gen ed. And for as much as I love to talk and perform in front of people, speech class was so hard for me. We had like a super hard professor, and I just remember getting nervous all the time just because I was like terrified of the professor. Yeah. So after like my first 2 speeches in class, I would come home every single day and practice my speech like at least 5 minutes in front of my mirror, just because I wanted to see how I looked, and I honestly wanted to prove them wrong. I wanted to be like, no, I know that I was projecting well. Things like that. But it does make you more confident over time. It feels so goofy at first. Sometimes I still feel goofy whenever I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm practicing lines and things like that. But it does overall make you more confident.
And confidence is the key to success and happiness. Maybe. I don't know. Not an expert, but
I think if you're not confident, then fake it till you make it.
Yeah. I know that kind of works for some people. Just kind of playing the part, and the next thing you know, sort of like you're putting an ad out into the universe's paper saying, hey, I do this thing, and then people start calling you up to do it. You start doing it, and then you just start doing it, and people are like, oh, you're really good at this. Yeah, this is actually my first time doing it. No, that's not accurate. But I'm really curious, like, what your background and family support like has been like, or just what your family life has been like growing up. Was it tight? Was it kind of loosey goosey, big family? Kind of what was that like growing up?
My family, like most families, has definitely had to overcome, some downs. We've had our fair share of ups and downs, but I think, like, looking back, there are a lot of things, especially the down moments, I think, that really helped me become the person that I am today. So it's hard for me to ever really like see something, even if it was bad, and think, wow, I wish that didn't happen, because then I think, would I know how to handle this situation now? But whenever I was younger, I was about, I think I had just turned 6 years old. My parents actually divorced. And I have an older sister who's about 7 years older than me. So she was 13 at the time, and definitely took more of the brunt of the divorce than I did, because at 6, you don't really understand what's going on. You just notice that, like, dad's not home as much anymore and stuff like that. Looking back, and even though I didn't fully understand, I did know that my mom and dad fought, things like that, because I knew, like, my sister would always kind of take me into her room, and she'd give me her headphones and things like that. Wow. And like, that was just kind of how it was. And as bad as it is, I think that some families work out for the best when the parents do divorce, because we definitely had a hard time following the divorce. I had a single mom who was a nurse and had to spend a lot of really long nights working to support my sister and I. And my dad, I married my stepmom not long after. And in the middle of that, my mom's only sister, her name was Melissa. She actually died of brain cancer. And so I remember being so young and just not knowing what anything meant. But that people just kept kind of leaving. Like, like my dad was kind of gone, and then there was this new household and a whole new life there. And then my Aunt Melissa died, and her and my mom are like the exact same age difference as my sister and I, and that was my mom's younger sister. And I remember watching my mom kind of dealing with that on top of the divorce still, and kind of wondering, you know, how come my mom is still, she's having such a hard time. She just, you know, and just seeing that at such a young age, you get such a respect for not only like both of your parents for doing the best that they can after a divorce, but like moms. I really kind of saw how strong my mom was in those years growing up, and even my older sister, because whenever my mom couldn't be there to do something, if she had to work or something like that, my sister was there. My sister watched me a lot, stuff like that. So I am ever grateful for like the women in my life for sure. I think that like that's why I am such like a girl's girl nowadays. It's just because I grew up so close with my mom and my sister. But then later on down the road, my dad actually got very, very sick. I was in 5th grade at the time. And this was when H1N1 was very prominent.
Oh, right, yeah.
Yeah, and my dad had actually gotten very sick with it.
Wow.
And he was like one of the very first cases in like our town too, or something like that. I don't know, but was very, very sick, and then battled several complications from it. When he was admitted to the hospital, he had double pneumonia on top of having the flu, and was just not doing well. And I remember I was going to go camping with my friend Michaela, and I was like waiting on her mom to come pick me up. And then I don't know I can't remember if it was my grandmother or if it was my aunt, who's also my godmother, but called my mom and told my mom that my dad was being life flighted to the hospital, that he was very severely ill. And I remember everyone being, you know, everybody telling me stuff, but not telling me anything at all. Because like I said, you know, I was still young. And I think like a lot of these things happened whenever I was so young that it's really hard for me to reflect and like remember how they truly affected me. Because a lot of times like people don't explain to you when you're a kid what the heck is going on. And so I remember my grandparents coming to pick me up. We drove straight to the hospital. I couldn't see my dad because he was in the ICU. And then shortly after that, he actually was put into a coma. So he was in a coma for quite some time. And at first, his health was really only getting worse. It was every single day was just this like awful uphill battle. And every time I felt like we were taking one step forward, take 2 steps back. And I remember one day asking my stepmom, you know, if my dad was going to be okay. And for the first time, she kind of had to tell me, you know, I don't know. It doesn't look good. And so being so young and thinking about your dad dying and things like that, it was a lot. I remember getting pulled out of school once a week to go see my dad in the hospital just because we never really knew when it was going to be it. And then they had like a some type of machine that was still, I don't know if it was still like on the testing grounds or what, but we did approve it for my dad to use it, or for them to try it on my dad to see if it would improve, because he was on so many medications, and like the medication would help one thing, but then it would make another thing worse. And before we knew it, we were having all of these complications just stacked on top of each other. So one of his biggest issues with the pneumonia was that his lungs kept filling up with fluid and they couldn't get the fluid out. And so they put him in this machine, and it was basically like this giant rotating bed. And whenever it would rotate him, it would help the fluid come out of his lungs. And from there, on top of like the extra steroids that they were giving him, he actually did start making these miracle leaps and bounds, basically, in recovering. And he actually did fully recover. I remember the doctors telling us, and yes, yeah, the doctors telling me and my stepmom and everyone else that, you know, he's probably not going to come out of this normal. Like there's, you know, because of how long he's been in the coma, there's a good chance of brain damage. Like we don't know if he'll be able to walk. And my dad is walking and talking, probably better than ever. The only single thing that affected him is he does have slight nerve damage in one of his pinkies, and that's it.
Dang, that's really
Yeah,
good.
so he had a full recovery. They actually did a short little documentary on him called Medical Miracles, or he was on an episode of
Oh,
Medical
wow.
Miracles. Yeah, which was really, really cool. I remember coming home one day and then there was like news people in the living room. I was like, what is this?
I feel like you should get an IMDb credit for that. Something.
Right? Right? I was featured.
Yeah.
From there, I think like it did something. I think like that situation did something to my immediate family. We all started kind of, I don't want to say we appreciated each other more, but I think it healed a lot of wounds, basically.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I'm curious how, like, because I mean, it just seems like these little, not baby traumas, but just these traumas that you weren't necessarily old enough to like fully adultly like comprehend and reflect and like understand and deal with. Like, how did you try to understand it in the moment, and like, are you still going through trying to like understand it and like what your view of trauma is? And like, I don't know, I'm just intrigued of just kind of how your mind works.
Watching everyone kind of have to struggle in that time frame, and then just at the same time not really being old enough to comprehend any of it. I think looking back, it's like a blur. A lot of it's like really gray, or like just confusing. I don't know. I think that I had a very, very different experience from what my sister had, because my sister was 13. And so we were both severely affected differently. But I think both of my parents found their people now. Both of my parents are remarried. And I think that they're both happy in the lives that they live now. And a lot of it feels very civil now. I'm very glad for where I stand today with my family and where my parents stand with each other and things like that, because I have to make, especially now with the type of career I'm trying to pursue in this industry and things like that, having the support of both my parents, both sets of parents, honestly, is really, really important. But I think with my dad getting sick and kind of experiencing that, I was a bit older. So when people did explain things to me, it was like micro explaining, like dumbing it down for me, and nobody ever promising anything. So I never had false hope. I will say that, and I think that's one thing that kids can develop, is like a false sense of okayness. And I was always very aware that, like, my dad was sick and that my dad may die. Like, I had to learn about close loss at a very young age, especially after my aunt passed away. So I think that was more settled than probably the divorce was between my parents. I still wish that we would have done like counseling of some sort, or something, just to kind of have more of a grasp on it. I don't know. I think being committed to a single person forever is so scary to me, just because I've seen so many marriages fall apart.
Yeah.
And it's just the reality of the world that we live in nowadays too, that just makes it so scary to me. And it just, I don't know, for me, I have a hard time sometimes imagining myself married, just because I think about, people can be so in love and then nobody wants to fight for anything anymore. It just like, and I'm not saying my parents didn't fight for their marriage. I think that at the end of the day, they weren't suited for each other anymore, and that's okay. But I think that there are so many people that nowadays just let go of marriage, and like, I don't know. I definitely, I struggle with the idea of it a lot. I don't know if most of it comes from the fact that my parents divorced, but I think like a lot of it comes from just like the culture that we live in, and the idea of marriage nowadays it's very scary and overwhelming to me.
Yeah. Both my parents have been divorced twice, so like, yeah, and a lot of my other, like my aunts or my uncles have been divorced like as well. So like I'm not used to it. It doesn't get easy. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
What's always been confusing is when I hear about like because I have older friends or whatever, but like when I hear about my friends
Right.
like, yeah, like, or everything's the same, we're just gonna get divorced. It's just like the way that they talk about it so nonchalantly, as if they've only been
Yeah.
dating for like 2 weeks. Like, yeah, it just didn't work out. And like I was like, you've been married for like 25 years. Like, wait, what? Like
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I don't need to probe, right? Like it's not my business, but it's
Right.
still just kind of like how hearing that from a couple of different people, I'm like, oh my gosh, like how nonchalant, or like, yeah, it just didn't work out. Like, what? Well, that's so
Yeah.
weird.
Yeah. That's what freaks me out the most. But I think in some twisted way, the watching my parents divorce only made me really want to be like, I guess, extra picky about who I'm going to
I see what
spend the
you're
rest of my
saying.
life with. And being, just being so much more conscious of that. Like, do I actually see myself with this
Mm-hmm.
person forever? Because I want to avoid a lot of things that, like, a lot of unnecessary troubles, a lot of, like, who is my child going to spend this Christmas with? And having to pack a bag to go in between moms and dads. I don't want that
Yeah.
for my future family.
Can you spit any
But
relationship advice for people of like, like, let's say someone's like, I don't know how to pick the right person, or I don't know, like, what would you say? Is there something people should look for?
mm-hmm. So I've been in my relationship now for almost 2 years. I just think that a lot of love, like the concept of love in relationships, is viewed with like rose tinted glasses. I think like everybody kind of sees this romantic perception of everything. And not saying that relationships shouldn't be romantic and things like that. I think there are very beautiful moments that should be romantic, and those are intimate things. But I think that at the end of the day, too, you also need to realize that this is a totally separate person who has totally separate experiences, was brought up in a totally different house from you. Maybe they believe in different things. Maybe, you know, maybe they stand for different things.
Mm-hmm.
You don't know. And I think really truly getting to know someone is key. Just knowing, because those little things that you find annoying at first are just going to get more and more annoying. If there's something that you notice early on and you're like, I don't really like that, take it as a red flag. Don't ignore it. I feel like I tell my friends that a lot. They're like, oh, well, he said this. And I was like really kind of offended, but like, he's so cute. And I'm like, oh, but like, that's a red flag. Like,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
he's cute, but there are so many other cute guys out there that probably would not say that same thing. I think just like, you just really have to get to know people
Mm-hmm.
nowadays. Take your time. Everybody wants to rush into everything. And I think you really need to take your time and figure out who that person is and what do you love about them. What makes you happy to be around them? How do you feel when you are around them? How do they make you feel as a person? Do they cherish you? I think we have to take it back to very simple times where a lot of it has to deal with how they treat you, how they treat other people. For me, a big thing is how a guy treats another person. So like when me and my boyfriend went out for dinner for the first time, I paid close attention to how he treated our waitress and how he tipped. Even my parents always told me, how does he tip? And just things like that. How does he talk to other people? How does he talk to me? How does he talk to my friends and my family and things like that were really, really big things for me. And I just think that you see someone's true character and how they talk to other people, how
Mm-hmm.
they treat other people, especially people who work in like the service industry and things like that. We need to start spending more time getting to know each other. Actually date. I think like people combine the term of dating with boyfriend and girlfriend and just like completely excuse that area of dating where you're going out and you're doing things with this person and getting to know them and learning about them and stuff, and instead people just kind of like are so quick to jump into everything. I know that I used to be that person who kind of jumped into everything. And I went on like a lot of really like not so great dates and stuff just because I thought the guy was cute. But eventually I found my guy that is cute and very respectful and makes me laugh and is very nice. And I think, like I said, just start taking your time on things.
What's like things not to do on the first date?
I think
Common mistakes like talking about your ex is probably not a good idea.
Oh, no, I don't think, unless it comes up as very casual conversation. I think like if it's like a front runner of the conversation, then that's maybe like a red flag. Maybe they're not over their ex. But I feel like the ex conversation always comes for sure. I think like for me, like a big thing to have is manners. So like if that guy doesn't have a lot of manners, if he's like overbearing, I want to know about you, but I don't want the whole conversation to revolve around you. I think there needs to be that nice balance where you're kind of talking back and forth about each other, or about things you like or things you like to do, things that interest you. Because if you're the girl and you leave the table, or if you're the guy and you leave the table and all you know is their favorite color, their favorite animal, where they last vacation, both their parents' names, where they grew up, blah,
Right.
blah, blah, and they only know that you like spaghetti, then that's not a very good, it's not a really good balance. So I think good conversation, picking up on those key things, like you have to start reading into people and paying attention, I think is so important.
How do you put yourself out there and be yourself when you're around other people? Because I think that's kind of hard to do sometimes, which can affect the dating world, but I'm more talking even platonically, it can be kind of hard to be like approach a group in public or to put yourself out there to meet new people, like if you maybe don't have confidence in who you are as a person.
I know that not everyone can be an extrovert, and there are a lot of people that are, extroverted introverts and stuff like that. Sometimes I refer to myself as an extroverted introvert. In a social setting, I'm pretty okay, but when I'm alone, I like to be alone, sort of thing. Approaching people, or even in the dating world, when you're on like maybe a first date with someone and stuff like that, I think it's so important to be fiercely real. And even if you do get judged, or even if those people don't want to hang out with you or whatever it is, that's, at least you're still you, and you're not trying so hard to fit in. You're not trying so hard to be something that you're not. Because at the end of the day, you're going to feel more exhausted. You're going to have a harder time fitting in if you're constantly trying to keep up.
Right.
Putting yourself out there, at the end of the day, at least you can say that you put yourself out there. And that's something that I had to learn how to do too. For so long, I wanted to just be liked, and I wanted to just get invited to things. I wanted to just fit in, and I felt constantly tired, and like my cup was always empty. You should always be filling someone else's cup. In giving and receiving, it should be an exchange. I just feel like at the end of the day, I was always so tired, and like I felt like I was coming home and taking off the mask, and then waking up the next day, putting it back on, and having to go through the day. But I felt like nobody truly knew who I was or what I really liked. And I would sit in the car and listen to music with some of my people that I thought were my friends, and I didn't like the artist at all, but I would be singing along to the songs because I didn't want to admit to them that I didn't like that music, stuff like that. And it's just, is it really worth that if you can't be yourself? So I think at all times, just be fiercely real. I've had more doors open for me. I've had more genuine friendships than anything, just by being myself. And I've been rejected by people who we just don't vibe. If you don't vibe, you don't vibe. It's more of a life thing, I feel like. I think you'll have greater reward, though, by being true to yourself and being who you really are to other people. Because the people that do accept you for who you truly are, you may make very genuine, amazing friendships out of that. So yeah, I just stick to your guns, be yourself. And even if it's hard at first, just keep working on it, keep building. I think it's something that comes with time, for sure.
What's been your experience with mental health? Have you had struggles with anxiety or depression or things like that?
I actually have pretty bad anxiety. I do actually, and I'm not ashamed to admit this either, but I do actually go to therapy for it too. And I have anxiety about different things. Sometimes I have social anxiety, and sometimes I have anxiety about my body. Like my last therapy session, I was talking to her because I was about to go to Florida with my boyfriend's family for the holidays, and I was like, oh, I'm feeling really nervous because I'm going to be wearing a swimsuit, and I just, I'm feeling nervous, and like getting to talk about those things, and open up about those things. It's really nice talking to like an unbiased third part, or not even third, but different party. But yeah, no, I definitely have my own issues with anxiety. Some days are definitely better than others. And then even with when it's around this time of year and stuff like that, seasonal depression is also sometimes a problem. I find it extra hard to get out of bed some days and just kind of get on with my life. And there was actually this particular season, a couple weeks ago, really, like right before the holidays really hit, where I felt like all of these really awesome things were happening for me. I got accepted into film school, and I found out that I was going back to LA to speak at this event, and everything was seemingly great. I was about to celebrate my 21st birthday. Like, from the outside looking in, everything was amazing. But really on the inside, I was struggling so much. I just couldn't stay up. Like, I couldn't stay happy, and I couldn't figure out why. And I was isolating myself badly. My relationship went through its own struggles during that time too, because I just didn't know how to handle myself, and therefore I didn't know how to handle our relationship on top of everything. And so, yeah, I'm very human. Like I said, some days are better than others. I try my best, though. I do try, doing the hardest thing, and sometimes the hardest thing is getting out of bed, or taking a shower or something like that.
Something little.
Every time I do that one really hard thing, even if that's the only hard thing I do that day, I do feel accomplished. I do feel like I did something.
Yeah. What's the one mistake people make when they're going through anxiety that allows them to get better?
The worst thing that you can do, I think, is like tell those negative thoughts that they're right. Once you start believing those thoughts, that's where you start kind of the downhill spiral. I really, like, most of the time whenever when I'm really struggling with anxiety, there's that thought in the back of my mind that's like, this, you're just worked up right now. This will pass. This is not really what's going on. You're not actually, this will go away. This is not how it's going to be forever. But then there's also that other voice that's like, oh, you do not look good in that swimsuit. Or those people do not want to talk to you, or those people don't want you to go to their party, or whatever, they don't actually want you there and stuff like that. You just have to ignore those bad thoughts, because most of the time it's your mind making up like these lies to make you feel that way. I think like another really big issue for me was isolation, and like not wanting to show up to things because I kept feeling like I was getting like a pity invite, basically. And I would literally talk myself out of going to things, because I would be like, oh, well, they don't actually want me there. It's just because, my other friend is going, so they feel like they have to invite me, sort of thing. And I would actually talk myself out of going out and making those memories with my friends. And you just have to, you can't cave into the lies. You just have to, be strong. You've got to get out there, and you've got to just try to keep moving forward. And there are going to be some days, I'm not going to lie, where you're not going to be able to do that. And that's okay. It's okay to have those days, but you need to try not to make every day that day.
Yeah. I mean, you got a lot of good wisdom over there, wizard.
Well, thank you.
So we're gonna wrap up a little bit here. We have our fun 5 questions. Number 1, what is a motto or quote that you have?
One of my absolute most favorite quotes. It's actually hanging on my wall. It says, "The day you plant the seed is not the day you eat the fruit." And basically, the reason that this quote means so much to me is it tells me to slow down. It tells me to be patient, which is something that I have always lacked is patience. And especially when it comes to things in this industry, I want things to happen now, and I want things to happen for me because of all this work that I've done so far. I just keep telling myself, oh, why is this not happening now? And I have to remember, that I'm planting these seeds so that something beautiful can blossom from it. And that beautiful thing is going to take time, and great things take time. So I'm just learning to be patient.
What is the solution to improve mental health?
For me, it's to-do lists. Making a to-do list so that I can see all the mountains I have to tackle that day. Because if I'm having kind of a bad mental health day, and I know that I have to do laundry that day, that may be the biggest mountain that I have to face that day, is going downstairs and doing my laundry. But I know that if I tackle that mountain, that I will get through the next thing. So making to-do lists for me, I need to do laundry in the morning. I need to take a shower. I need to make myself breakfast or something like that. I look at them as like checking off like these mountains. Like I'm climbing these mountains, I'm overcoming them. And that's what I'm doing today, is I'm going to get through this by going through my to-do list. So for me, especially when it comes to seasonal depression and things like that, definitely to-do lists.
That's good. Yeah, that works for me as well. Definitely second that recommendation. What's a proud moment of your life, like, so far?
I did just really have a really good proud moment, actually back in December, like right at the beginning of the month. So I walked in the Live Out Loud charity show in Chicago. It was their 10th annual one in the Grand Ballroom at the Palmer House. And if you don't know what Live Out Loud charity is, it's actually it's a charity that advocates for suicide prevention and awareness. And me being a person who puts a lot of time and thought into mental health and tries to promote that image for myself and other people, getting to walk in that show was everything for me. And getting to be proud of my body on a runway in these couture fashions, and watching other boys and girls, different from myself, and getting to embrace their insecurities and their body types and everything like that, and really coming together and getting to celebrate our individual beauty was everything to me. And getting to meet so many people too, and tell my story, but listen to other people's stories as well, was really awesome. I got to walk for one designer, Prana Maker, and she does like these no-sew gowns where basically every piece of fabric is just like she hand dyes them, and then she just ties them around you in like different ways. It's super cool. But we had the rainbow, and she tied 8 women together in one piece of fabric, and they all walked down the runway together. And the biggest thing that she wanted to showcase in that was just diversity, and showing different ages, different genders, different people. And it was really so beautiful. That whole night was just such a dream. But a very proud moment for me. That's for sure.
Cool. 2020 goal.
Definitely my book. That's something that I really want to put a lot of my heart into this year. I always feel better when I'm creating whatever it may be. So putting my efforts into that is a big thing. Oh, my favorite part of myself. Gosh, I wish that people took more time to think about this question. My favorite part about myself, I think.
So, hey, I said this about you at the end.
Personal goal outside of the book, again, just taking everything with a grain of salt. I work in an industry where, people will say very personal things, and you have to learn not to take very personal things so personally. So everything is subjective. What one casting director may not like about you, another one may love about you. So taking everything with a grain of salt and just keep moving forward.
There's so much truth in what you just said about, like, just because somewhat similar quote, but not really. Hopefully this makes sense. But someone told me that you can be the juiciest peach in the world, and there will always be someone who doesn't like peaches.
Yep.
That there's just because one person says that this is the case, that doesn't make it true. Yeah,
Right.
it's so
Yep.
good. You get to be on any movie set and or TV show. Let's do TV show, because then it's like a longer time. And you can do I was on the Community set and I was in a minor role, but I got to hang out with Amy Poehler and Nick Swartz or whatever his face is, Nick Offerman, and
right.
so you get to either be a main character, minor character, but you get to pick any show and be there and just be on set and hanging out with all the people.
Okay, so this is an unpopular opinion, but I absolutely love Penn Badgley.
Okay.
Granted, I didn't like his character that much in Gossip Girl, but I love him as an actor. He's a phenomenal actor in my book. So that show, their new season just came out. I've read the books, so I've been genuinely obsessed ever since the books. But yeah, no, I think it'd be awesome to hang out with him. He actually lives a super interesting life. I feel like. But I also love Elizabeth Boone. I don't even know if that's her last name anymore, but she was in the first season, and she's a really big women's activist, and I really like that. And I think that'd be super cool to talk to them about weird things, but also talk to them about important things.
Yeah. What's your favorite part of yourself?
What my favorite part about myself is my openness to people. I feel like my friends come to me a lot when it comes to, all kinds of situations. Whether it be boyfriend problems or family problems, or sometimes they just don't really know what the heck is going on. They just don't feel themselves. And I feel like a lot of times I become that person for a lot of my friends and a lot of my people in general. I don't like to say my friends, I just like to say my people.
Yeah.
But I do always leave the conversation feeling, I don't want to say warm, but good. I that's a good umbrella word for it. Just because I love knowing that they can come to me even with the ugliest things, the most embarrassing things, or the things that they want to hide from everyone else in this world, that they can come to me and talk to me about that. I love that. I love that I can be that person for, even if it's just one person in this world.
Yay. You're a good person.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'm trying.
Well, you're doing a good job. Well, now we're done. Basically, what we're going to do here is that I want you to pick a person, significant other, family member, 8th grade science teacher, whoever you want. You're shouting this person out. Hey, Janice, thanks so much for everything you've done for me. You taught me so much about patience. Whatever you want to say, you're picking one person and just shouting them out, encouraging them. And then you're going to share this part of the podcast with them.
So the person that I would like to shout out would actually be, his name is Trace Goodwin. He is so much more than my best friend. He's like a brother to me. But in the semi-short amount of time that I've known him, there's not a single thing that he doesn't know about me, and that it being the good, the bad, and the ugly. And I just love that no matter what, I can go to him for anything. He's that person for me. But yeah, I don't know. He makes me laugh so hard, and I think everybody needs a daily dose of laughter, and that's my daily dose of laughter. Usually comes from Trace. So, but yeah, no, he's so much more than important could ever explain to me. So
sweet. Shout out.
Shout out.
Cool. Well, do you want to shout out that walk thing? Is that something people can get involved in?
Oh yeah, the Live Out Loud charity show. Yeah. So if anything, just following the Live Out Loud charity, really amazing charity. It does huge things, and out of the Chicago area. But they have such a huge pool on, people now throughout the country that it's really cool to see how much they've grown. But they're not that far away from us, and they do a lot of really cool shows to raise awareness and funds. So I tried my best to promote those on my own as well, but definitely you can find them on any social media platform in the Live Out Loud charity. So definitely go check out LOLC for sure.
Well, hey, thanks so much for joining me. You're an awesome person.
Yeah, it was great.
You've gone through a lot, and you've got a lot of really cool things that are coming up in 2020 in the next few years.
Yes, I hope so. Fingers crossed.
Yeah, you got this.
All right. Well, thank you so
Yeah.
much. This was really
Good.
fun.
Well, we'll stay in touch. I'll send you a sticker.
Okay,
All right.
awesome.
Bye.
Bye.
Hey everybody, this is Ryan from the Classic Buffalo Podcast. Wanted to take a second to talk about Anchor, how I'm actually making this podcast happen. Super happy that I'm partnering with them. So, Anchor is actually the easiest way to make a podcast. I've done my research. This is basically the best way. I promise. It's going to give you everything you need in one place for free, which is the best part. It's going to have tools, so you don't really need a fancy schmancy recording guy. Anchor's going to be helping you out there, and then they're going to distribute the podcast everywhere to Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google, everything. And then you can also make money with basically no minimum listenership, which is kind of rare. So hop on Anchor as soon as you can. Thanks. What's up, guys? You made it to the end of the episode. It's time for the debrief, where I talk a little bit about today's episode, a little bit about Chloe. Shout out to you. You're an amazing person. Your voice makes people feel comfortable. Let me put it to you that way. Just something about your persona, even hanging out in person, you give out that hospitality, I can be myself vibe. So thank you so much for giving that off and being an awesome person. Specifically about some things that you did say, Chloe, was, the freckles in fashion. I really love that. The fact that French, just artistry and French fashion is very progressive and just how is the body look? How, I feel like it's always a good step when we're moving towards body positivity and moving towards just how does the normal body look, and let's advertise that, and instead of kind of counterculture to what we're used to with you have to look a certain way. You have to be very, very big or very, very tiny, or there's nothing for the middle people. There's nothing for the average person. So I just love that, just kind of the idea of freckles, which I love people with freckles. You guys are the best. Freckle gang. I think I might have freckles, or at least I used to. I don't know if that's a genetic thing or something that goes away after time, but shout out to the freckle gang. Also totally can empathize with not wanting to get married or having difficulty in relationships based on having divorce so rampant in your family. It's pretty much if you were to name someone who's next to me, my cousin or my aunt or my uncle or my brother, it's it seems like everybody, we just get divorced. I'm used to kind of just that now, and that kind of makes me sad, because I think it does kind of, whatever trauma you go through or whatever things happen to you, it can kind of form the way you think, and you can change that to be a bad way you think or a good way you think. And if somebody treats you bad, you can either say, well, this is all I deserve, or you can say, I'm just going to do my best, because you can never control everything in a situation, but I'm going to do everything in my power to make sure it doesn't happen like XYZ. If I want to raise my kids differently, if I want to have a different type of relationship because the relationships I've had in my past have been all bad, I want to be overly affectionate, under affectionate. I want to be more stern. I want to be less stern. I want to be this. I want to be that. You can make those changes. I just want to give power to people. When you hear this and say, maybe I've gone through some type of trauma, I want to give you power and say, in your relationships going forward, if you've had a bad relationship, platonic or romantic, that's been bad, you can choose the way that you want to have relationships with people. I just want to give some power to you guys. So yeah, a pretty awesome episode. I hope you enjoyed listening to Chloe's story. Super cool to finally have someone who has an IMDb credit on. That's nuts. And I'll just remember me when you get your Oscar. That's all you have to do. But hopefully you learned a couple things from her. Maybe even some dating tips. Kind of just be yourself, fiercely real. Be yourself, because at the end of the day, maybe you have a 2-hour long date, but you may never see that person again, and you'll always be yourself. You can never really run from yourself, unfortunately and fortunately, because some of you guys are awesome people out there. Most of you are. But if you'd like to be on an episode, we can talk about anything you want. Anything from ducks to trucks. Maybe that'll be the slogan. But anything from anxiety, depression, suicide, mental health issues, all the way to if you're trying to start your own business or fashion, or you make music, whatever you want. Anybody can be on here. So I'd love to talk with you and create a space for you to feel safe and give you an opportunity to share something. So that's all I got for today. Well, it was a little bit of a delay, just some work things going on, some other things going on in my life. I kind of fell a little bit behind, but I hope you enjoyed this episode. And if you want to be on or know somebody who wants to be on, hit me on Instagram at Classic Buffalo. And I'll see you again on Thursday, guys. Take it easy. Bye.